This time I'm giving you Dave West, CEO at Scrum.org. I hope that you will find this conversation that we had some time ago interesting and valuable. And at the same time, I have a little surprise for you. Dave is a keynote speaker at Online Scrum Master Summit 2025. If you are interested in listening more from Dave, register for the summit. And now, let's go back to our episode. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome back. If you are my regular guest, if you are new to my channel, my name is Joanna, and this is another episode of Joanna or Joanna's, so my tribe. So I'm meeting wonderful people around the world that bring different stories, inspirations, insights. They share their knowledge. And today, as always, if you know me, you know what I'm going to say. Another wonderful guest. So, Dave West, it's a pleasure to have you here with me today.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. I don't know how wonderful I'm going to be, but I'll do my best to be as wonderful as I can.
That's absolutely awesome. So, Dave, would you be so kind and introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. So my name's Dave West. I'm the CEO and product owner at Scrum.org. Scrum.org is the home of Scrum. It's an organization founded by Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum, and really we're professional Scrum trainers, of which you are one, obviously all around the world. We actually have trainers in 42 countries, but teaching in probably something in the high 60s in terms of countries. And then, the certification PSM1, PSPO1, 2, 3 has sort of become the de facto standard. We have over 1 million people who have passed the certifications. Again, actually in more countries, in like 200 and something countries, which according to the UN there isn't that many countries, but Google has a different idea of that than the UN, I think. So yeah, that's me, based in just outside Boston, Massachusetts, the United States of America.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Dave, why did you decide to join Scrum.org?
Oh gosh, so I've known Ken Schwaber for 24, 5 years, something like that. I actually met him when I was the RUP product manager working for Dean Leffingwell, of all people. So if you're in the Agile sort of world, you'll know some of these names. Dean Leffingwell went on to create Scaled Agile Framework. Anyway, so I was working as the RUP product manager, and I was speaking at an event. I think I may have been keynote, and Ken Schwaber was on a track, but I'm not 100% certain that's true, but in my memory, that's true. And he comes up to me, this sort of random guy comes up to me and goes, "Hi, you're the RUP product manager." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "My name's Ken, and you're an idiot." And I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting introduction." And and he kind of smiled when he said it. He wasn't being particularly nasty, I don't think, or maybe he was, and I just took it better. And anyway, we started talking. We sat down, had a cup of coffee, and we had this interaction. And then over those 20 something years, we've become firm friends, and Ken's really become a mentor. I went to Forrester Research, ended up running the app dev practice there, covering Agile. So I leaned on Ken heavily to help me, ask the right questions around the Agile, companies doing agility, and help companies adopt these ideas. I then went to a startup that actually Ken said was a mistake. Turns out it wasn't, but so he's not always right. And he really helped me when we were growing the engineering team. When I started, we, had a small team of a couple of people. We ended up growing to 30, 40 software engineers. The company was called TaskTop and it was sold to PlanView. Some of you may know the product. It's awesome. And the founder was Mick Curson, who wrote the project to product book. Anyway, so he mentored me during this time. And then I didn't realize that actually he hadn't just been mentoring me, he'd been interviewing me for 20 years. It's a heck of a long interview. I wouldn't recommend it. But it turns out he then he was, and he says to me one day, we were in a coffee shop. That's where we always used to meet. He'd have donuts and bacon. I would have something a little bit more healthy usually, though we did both have coffee. And he said to me, "Do you want to come and run Scrum.org?" He goes, I want to, get less involved, semi-retire, and now um, almost fully retired, though I did have a breakfast with him yesterday. He goes, I want you to take over Scrum.org. And I said, no, that's a stupid idea. Why would I want to, what these agile consultants are like? And he goes, no, I think ours are different. And I was like, hmm. So I met a few. I think he selected the ones that he knew I'd get on with, which helped. And I talked, I looked at the business, I looked at the opportunity, I looked at the clients, I talked to a bunch of clients and realized that it was a great opportunity to really extend my mission. My mission historically had been to help people and teams build software just a little bit better. It was I think it's a worthy mission, and I did that at Rational Software, did that at Forrester Research, I did that at TaskTop, and then what Scrum gave me is the ability to help not just software teams but product teams and actually bigger teams, deliver value a little bit better. And it really did that mission of helping people and teams solve complex problems. Um, though it wasn't actually that at that time I joined, has really resonated with me because I look at organizations and they're just so full of unhappy is too strong a word, but unfulfilled people. My mum worked at Sainsbury's for 20 something years and she worked on the cigarette counter and she knew how to run that counter, but she was in a system that would just continuously cause her grief. For instance, they delivered the cigarettes. And cigarettes are very expensive, right? And people like to steal them, right? They delivered them at the same time that the national lottery, just before the national lottery was pulled, which basically meant and they had the lottery thing on her counter, so there was a huge line, and they were delivering new cigarettes at the same time. I mean, everybody was unhappy. The people, big boxes of cigarettes. It was just like, why couldn't she improve that? Well, because she was part of a system. And by the way, Sainsbury's is an awesome organization, and I'm not dissing them, but the system didn't give her that freedom. And I think at the heart of Scrum, the reason why I love it is it's about empowering people and teams to actually improve how they work and deliver value to their stakeholders. So that's the reason ultimately that I joined Scrum.org to continue on that mission to help organizations and people and teams really fulfill their own potential.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And when did it all start for you? When were this moment when you officially joined Scrum.org?
October the 1st, 2015.
2015.
Big year because also Leicester City, my great football team that I love and unfortunately spend far too much time crying about, I mean, supporting, um, they won the Premier League the 15 and 16 season. So it was a pretty good year all round for me. Not only did I get to work with my mentor a lot more regularly, but I also got to meet, at that point, 100 amazing professional Scrum trainers. I got to work and help shape a really cool team, and I got access to this huge community of Scrum professionals that really are trying. I mean, moaning a lot as well, but trying to change the world. And it's been a fantastic journey over the last almost 10 years.
Yes, exactly. That was my next question. So, if my math is correct, this year you're going to have 10 years anniversary, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, how exciting. That's another great question opportunity. So, Dave, what are your most powerful, interesting, valuable learnings from that journey so far?
What for the last 10 years? I think that there's a few, some of them good, some of them maybe less good. You know, ultimately, I think that the motivation that I brought in about empowering people to really fulfill their potential, to deliver more valuable products, etc. Scrum is as relevant today as it was 10 years ago. Um, you know, that need is actually just greater. The amount of complexity, the amount of change, fluidity, if that's a good word, right,
Mhm.
in the world is only greater. And yes, we do have new technologies like, you know, AI is obviously changing the shape of knowledge work slowly, but at the heart of that is the need to define problems, to build experiments, to continuously do empirical process, to change the way you're working based on your observations, to change what you're delivering based on observations. You know, those ideas are still as relevant today as they were, you know, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And now we actually have tools that can really that we can really accelerate that, can really put it on steroids, as it were. So there's that. The other thing that I think I've learned even more so, and I kind of knew this before, but maybe I, you know, didn't take it on board as much, that organizations are ultimately not necessarily optimum places to change or deliver product, meaning deliver value, deliver capabilities, whatever. They seem to be built around people, and people seem to be focused on all sorts of other things. Yes, they're you know their meetings are about the products and services that they're providing, but at the heart of it, it seems to be this sort of power, status, authority, risk, you know, like nervousness, these sort of things, and that gets in the way of delivering amazing products. When I compare, you know, my experiences of going in and talking to a large financial institution compared to, you know, working at a startup or multiple startups and seeing how they approach the work, I think it's very, very different. It's like comparing how Boeing went around manned space flight, you know, with Starliner initiative compared to how SpaceX did it. You know, and Boeing were obviously a huge failure, though we've finally got our astronauts back from the space station. One of them lives in the town next to us, so we hear a lot from her, from Sunita. And you know, it's just it fundamentally the philosophy. So I think that organizations changing organizations is incredibly hard, and I sort of knew that, but the last 10 years has really emphasized that. You know, I've seen some amazing uses of Agile and Scrum in organizations, and then slowly the antibodies of the organization destroyed it. You know, there was this amazing digital initiative at a large airline. I'm not going to say the name. And they had this, you know, digital studio. They were doing amazing stuff. And then obviously over time, the other parts of the organization realized that they had to help them, you know, provide services, APIs, whatever, you know, for the technology stuff, change business processes, take advantage of the tools that they were delivering. And they were like, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore, because every time we do it, it just makes this team look, or this organization look incredibly good. And they weren't doing it, you know, well, maybe they were doing it maliciously. There was some quite malicious people involved, but they were doing it because ultimately they wanted to deliver on their own needs and objectives, and they were and business doesn't seem to have the ability to provide clear strategy and then communicate that into the execution. So I think I've now learned that organizational change, and I know I kind of knew it, but it really is incredibly hard. And I'm disappointed because we know how to build organizations to respond to change really effectively. Yes, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but we know how to do it. whether it's us, whether it's lean startup, whether it's design thinking, whether it's lean UX, whether it's all these ideas, product thinking, people like Kagan, we know how to do it. There's such a body of experience to do it, but we don't, and we can't. And it's sort of disappointing. I haven't given up. I'm going to continue the good fight, in, at least for another 5 years, and then we'll see.
I love that spirit. I love persistency. I also have a follow-up question. So, does it mean that the idea of APOM and, talking about it, emphasizing the importance of thinking product and what are the consequences of change in the thinking, is it a part of this fight?
Yes, in fact, this is my next, I don't know, strategy. We tried that. It was the enterprise agility seems to have stalled in a lot of organizations. And when you look at those organizations, it's how the teams of teams, align to the business strategy and the outcomes that the organization is trying to achieve. Because of the disconnect, what's created, and because of the portfolio planning processes that support this sort of disconnect, it creates a level of chaos and complexity, and ultimately turns those scrum teams or those agile teams into work teams, not delivering value, not delivering. I mean, delivering value, but by accident almost. They're velocity, efficiency, making sure they're always busy. Driving down that backlog, and that backlog you can't form a sprint goal. It's aligned to like 20 product goals. It's your team's working on multiple projects at any one time. And I think that my current hypothesis is that because of this complexity, the project culture and the disalignment of teams to real clear business strategy, my hypothesis is that is undermining our ability to rapidly respond to the environment and to deliver value in a more meaningful way. So I believe the organizations that are doing a better job, whether they're called products or whatever, is a little bit moot. But products is a good sort of catchphrase to describe it, right? They are aligning in a way that to business strategy in a more effective way. They are funding products, not work. They are allowing those product teams and teams of teams, the product owners, product managers, whatever they're called, the people that are in charge of those teams, to really to build their own roadmap, to build their own destiny, to build their own plans, to build their own sort of like decisions. And they, yes, some of those are going to be cross product initiatives that are larger, but ultimately, if you can do that effectively, you can better deliver against business strategy. You can manage complexity more effectively, and you can align teams in a more motivated and meaningful way. And I really do believe that product thinking and the subsequent product operating model is a fundamental sort of approach to dealing with this disappointment that I've felt over the last 10 years, and or the last, I guess, 20, really, if you really put it out there. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use Scrum in a very work oriented way, and it is incredibly effective doing that. In fact, millions of people are doing that every day. When your backlog is work, and when you've got some sort of PMO that's driving work into the backlog, you can use Scrum to be very effective in driving that. But if you really want to take it to that next level, you really have to think about pushing ownership down, aligning to outcomes more effectively, and adopting some sort of product type thinking.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, what I hear is that it's some kind of a fight or frustration from the last, let's say, 20 years, right? Well, 20 years, it's actually an adult in many countries in the world, right? So this whole story is already an adult, but what I hear from you, and it is consistent with my experience and observations, we are still so stuck in this way of working, thinking. We are doing work. Well, we can even work very hard, but the question is, what's the value of that, and whether we are actually able to build valuable, successful products. So, why, in your opinion, why it is still happening? What's blocking us? Where are the obstacles?
Well, I think that I think there's many things that's blocking us, but I think the biggest hurdle that we need to deal with is the alignment of strategy to execution.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to manifest itself in most organizations through the project management office. And by the way, they're trying incredibly hard. And most PMOs that I talk to, the people that are working there care deeply, are incredibly diligent, and are doing their best. But they're working with a, an executive leadership, business sponsors, etc., groups that don't like to say no, that don't really want to make choices, that don't really want to um, drive the company in one direction. They want to drive it in many, many directions. They're dealing with an execution engine that is, doing agile maybe, but is ultimately unhappy, so that can find lots of reasons why there's always a you can't do that, or we've got a problem here. And because they're working on so many different initiatives driven by the business, and their job is to execute on time, on budget, they are ultimately um, not allowing the teams to take over that cognitive load, and drive to great outcomes. So what I think that is the biggest thing that's getting rid of, that's undermining our ability to do any of this. And so what I tell organizations when I'm talking to them about this, now normally they're talking to me because they're like, oh, that's interesting, product operating model, agile product operating model, let's see how we do it. So they've already taken a step on that journey. Is that I tell them that the number one thing they have to do is understand what their products are, and understand what those capabilities are, and group them in some meaningful way. They're probably not going to get it right, but that's okay. But let's at least get it. They need to put that in place quickly, and then start investing in those capabilities of those products in a in an effective way, and then reduce the number of cross-product initiatives that are necessary inside the organization. That doesn't mean we're not going to do them, but reduce how many are in flight at any one moment. And the response I tend to get is, oh, no, there's just so, no, I mean, oh, that's really, really hard. Yes. That's the reason why you're an executive in a large organization and you're paid a ridiculous amount of money. You need to make these tough choices, but you need your teams to have, one, ownership of the thing that they're working on, but two, clarity of why they're working on it. And if you do that, they're going to work out all sorts of interesting ways of delivering amazing capabilities to market. But if you don't do that, they're going to be doing work, unless you tell them exactly what that work is, and what it's what the outcomes are. They're going to just deliver that, and you're going to be okay, but you're not going to take it to the next level. All these organizations that I talk to really have this innate desire to become, a Google, an Amazon, a next, a company that people look to as changing the world, in the same way as Ford and Toyota changed the world in auto manufacturing back in the last century, or how GE changed the world both in a positive and negative way about how you organize a business, or how the all these companies, they want to be, or how Whole Foods brought social responsibility, or whatever. They want to do that. They want to be that next generation of enterprise, but it's tough because you have to make choices, and you have to sort of fundamentally decide what you're doing and what you're not doing, core and context. I know there's a lot of bad feelings about Tesla at the moment, because of Elon Musk and company's alignment with certain political agendas. But if you ignore that for a minute, one thing that Tesla did a fantastic job of, in a world where delivering cars is incredibly hard, it's the most complicated product that we build, right? Mass produce. Planes are more complicated, but they're not mass produced. They did a really good job of is deciding in core and context what is core to their strategic differentiation and what isn't. I bet if you go into any bank you're working with, you you probably see them building all sorts of things, and because they always have, or supporting all sorts of things. You're like, really? Can't you just buy a customer relationship management system? Oh, well, no, we're special. Okay, that's it. You can't, what is special about this bank or this financial institution? Let's invest in that. And for everything else, let's buy it and integrate it. And that doesn't solve some problems, I know, but it does at least show where you need to make those investments. So great thing about moving to a product model and starting to think about that is you can make those choices explicit. And yes, you can't instantly turn off systems and the like, but you at least have a plan, a roadmap, and an investment model that supports that. But at the moment, it's too complicated. There's too many things going on. There's too many focus areas, and I think we have to simplify and focus, and then magic can potentially happen.
Magic can magic can happen. Okay, that sounds terrific.
Potentially, I wasn't committing to any magic happening, but it might happen.
Ah, I'm laughing because on one hand, of course, some people now would say, "Oh, we are talking about magic, right? It's ridiculous." But on the other way, I think that we as humans, we really underestimate the importance of focusing on essentials. And I have found that many, many times that it's super easy to be busy and at the same time respecting certain constraints like time, right? Budget. Now it sounds like project management, right? But the point is to change the perspective fundamentally, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think that that sort of taking that step back, and I think that product definition can be a really interesting tool for taking that step back. You know what I mean? Because you step back and you say, okay, so what are we? What are our capabilities? How should they be aligned? What are the systems and the processes that we're supporting? And from that, defining what the products are that the organization, you know, believes in. Then you look at, okay, so where are we? You do classic sort of like benchmark investments, which the VC community has been doing for 50 years. And you say, okay, where is this product or this set of capabilities, this product on in terms of its evolution? Is it strategic to us, new, or is it something that we need to get rid of? Is it end of life, etc.? And that determines your investment profile. You then can clearly say, okay, based on that value, based on this investment, how do we resource it? And then from there, you allow you then empower people and you allow them to determine what's important and what isn't, and they will, or they'll cry out and say, look, you this is your level of investment, but these are all the things you want us to do. There's a disconnect here, and it makes it really apparent that we're investing too much in one thing and not enough in another, and then you have to make some tough choices. um, but that is why most of these organizations have incredibly smart people who have never been able really to make those choices or never feel empowered to make those choices. And now you've got you know that vehicle, that transparency to allow you to make those choices.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I have another question. how this insight, this knowledge helps you in being the leader for the company, right? Scrum.org. Do you have your own stories, your own perspective on that?
So it's interesting. I was at a face to face in the Netherlands a couple of weeks ago, and they said, "Oh, how are you applying the product model in Scrum.org?" And I'm dealing with all the same problems that larger. I mean, we're a much smaller organization, 20 so people, with 350 trainers all over the world, right? Um, so we're much smaller than many of the clients we're talking to around product model. That's for sure. But at a smaller level, we are having similar questions. We all know that the agile world is changing in terms of training certification, in terms of how training is consumed, how the role of professional scrum trainers in organizations and the like is changing. And I'm sitting at a point where I'm looking at my portfolio of products and capabilities, and I'm really looking at how I'm investing in them. And I know now how painful it is for clients, because the things that I'm investing in, I've historically invested in. So I have people focused and, expectations set with, say, professional scrum trainers or partners, or even the market in general. And but then I'm looking at value. I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at strategy and where we're going. And it is really hard. Should we, and this is very pertinent to you, yeah, should we reduce our investment in professional scrum trainers
Mhm.
and invest more in, the collaboration platform for, this million or so people, and offering them more things, etc.? Or should we, continue to invest in professional scrum trainers, run the face to faces, build, new products for them, etc.? And it's tough, because I can imagine an executive at a bank having the similar, uh, you know, probably bigger numbers and probably bigger groups, but looking at, Bob in, new business account acquisition or something, and realizing that actually, you've got 70% of the market. It's not about account acquisition anymore. It's about, this, I don't know, increasing service, increasing number of products that they used, whatever. And historically, we built this amazing set of products around account acquisition. I'm just using a very poor. The bankers are listening to this and going, "Oh my God, he's rubbish." And I am. Sorry, I'm no banker. Um, so and suddenly Bob, this executive is like, "Oh, we're going to have to reduce your team, to halve your team, and you're not as important anymore. Thanks, you did a great job. It was awesome." But you acquired 70% of all customers possible, But unfortunately, the satisfaction gap and the opportunity gap, just use sort of EBM time stuff, is in a different place now. Thank you. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when the dolphins leave, when the planet gets destroyed, and they go, "Thanks, thanks for all the fish," and off they go. And you're like, "Oh." But it is this moment that so I feel their pain. And part of me is like, "Oh, can I just keep my head down and not make any decisions?" But I'm afraid I've got to make some of those decisions for the mission, and for the owners of the company, and for the overstate the team that works for me. It is hard.
Thank you so much for your openness. I deeply appreciate that, and I think it makes our conversation more, appealing in the way, like, this is the example of the leader, right? Hello, meet Dave, right? So we have the same problems, the same challenges. Maybe, of course, some differences, scale, type of business, right? But definitely, what I hear is that the problems, in the end of the day, are very similar, right?
Yeah, yes, and it is. I think most organizations go through this, particularly, and I think particularly when the organization has some lineage and some history, when it's been around for a while. I think it is so much easier, when we were at Task Top, it was so much easier to make choices because we hadn't got that history, and I hadn't got Bob working on. Well, actually, I hadn't got somebody called Bob, but I had, some people working on things that I ended, but there was one or two people working on them, and I could go over to them and, using the power of my magnetic personality and obviously lots of alcohol, persuade them that this is all for the good. And because they all had stock, we were a startup, so sweat equity was definitely a key part of our compensation. Because they all had this stock, they were like, "What? Yeah, that makes sense. That works." But imagine if you hadn't got that stock. Imagine if you're really, what it really meant was we're going to have to get rid of you as a, your skills are no longer, they were great. You added that 70%, new customers. We love you, but times have changed. See ya. It makes it so much harder. And that is the reality that organizations have to go through every day. Yeah, and I definitely empathize with them as a senior leader. So I think what most senior leaders do, and this is not an insult, is they avoid those decisions if they possibly can. So they say yes to everything, and then guess what? They get nothing. Well, it's not that they get nothing, but they don't get as much as they could have got, and it's a bit of a you know, poor job done by everybody in the end. It's like you get into a car and user interface is okay, but it's not great. Or you try to pay online for something, and it's okay, but it's not awesome. Or more likely is the company isn't building that next generation of products, whether it's if you're in finance, crypto, or whether it's, I hear gold's very big at the moment. But whatever that next generation of products is, or that AI assistant, that agent, I mean, which I don't understand why companies like financial services companies aren't ultimately building a personalized AI agent for you that manages your finance, or provides that interface to manage finances more, so it can really tweak your portfolio based on that. But they're not doing that because they're GDPRing, or because they've got like 4,000 things that they're focused on in the 4,000 systems that they've never ever been able to get end of life because of the investments that they've made 20 years ago.
So tough life.
It is, but we're also very, very lucky. Yes, it is a tough life, but we are also very lucky because we have the means to, we're not, most of us aren't starving. Most of us have, got electricity. I know that can be an issue where you live. Yeah. Most of us, so in the scale of things, these are definitely first world problems, but it is, it could be so much better. I think that's the thing. There's so many problems that need to be solved in the world, and there's so much opportunity for organizations to do it. And, if you're a financial services company, building loads and loads of new products that give access to wealth where people haven't, the it in a financial services company, there is definitely in finance, there's definitely a disproportionate amount of help that rich people get compared to poor people with making financial decisions. That's a set of problems that we could unlock, if we increase this capacity for an organization. If you're an insurance company, helping people, protecting people is a fundamental idea of an insurance company, right? All those products that we can build. If you're in the medical, it, what's funny is that the amount of time that doctors spend not helping people but doing paperwork or doing this or doing that, they do know that they could just use some sort of transcribing thing and then use AI to summarize and to fill in, building systems to help them in, if you're a medic, there's just a million things that we could be doing every day that we're not doing, because we're not making those tough decisions, because we're not focusing teams, because we're not looking at what our core capabilities are, and we're not aligning our organization and investing in our organization in those ways. We're avoiding those tough decisions, because we don't want to make them.
Yeah, so that seems like APOM reminding organizations about some of the things is still very important. Or maybe I would even dare to say nowadays it's even more important than it used to be, taking into account the complexities and at the same time opportunities that are brought thanks to technological changes, thanks to certain advancements that we had. So that's great news for us, right? There is a powerful concept, a powerful idea to talk about, to broadcast. So, do you have any plans for the future of Scrum.org that you are willing and you can share with us?
I think, with respect to the agile product operating model, I'm going to continue to. It's become a bit of a labor of love, for me. I'll continue to build more content. There's a white paper that I'm hoping to get out in the next couple of weeks. We'll continue to focus on these things. I imagine we're going to build some products for the community, to the professional Scrum trainer community, to take out and use with clients. Maybe something around portfolio planning, maybe something around product definition, maybe some sort of APOM type workshop. I don't know. I'm still. I know what I'm focused on next, and that's portfolio planning. I think that is an area where, if we could help PMOs and PMO leadership think about products, if we could provide them with some tools. And I know they work in a project management office, so you think there's it's like going to a Leicester City game with a Nottingham Forest shirt on. You're like, oh, who's that person? Somebody's been eating my porridge. I don't know why the three bears popped into my head then, but the point is that I think that, and I didn't really think this before. I think the CIO in most organizations has a huge opportunity to implement a product operating model and the like. But in terms of the actual execution, which isn't the CIO, gotta love them, but they're busy playing golf and other important things. The project management office is an incredibly important part of of the execution of the product operating model. And I've only really got to think about that over the last few months, because I've been talking to some organizations about how do we go, what do we do next, and we tried to do it sort of ground up from teams, and that really didn't. I mean, it was okay, but it didn't really wasn't super effective. And we tried to do it with all the C level, all the SVPs, and get them together. But that when we did a great workshop with them and talked about products and everything, and then sort of fizzled out. I think maybe the PMO is the place to go next. So that's why I'm focused on that. Uh, Hopefully, I'm going to build a little workshop working with the community, or maybe even a class. Wouldn't it be nice to equip product leader product leadership skills to project managers and program managers? I think we can skill them up. It could be really, really interesting. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking about at the moment. Yeah.
I think that actually the story about three bears and what was this girl? Like golden hair?
Goldilocks, I think.
Goldilocks. Okay.
Goldilocks, was it?
Okay. So
Goldilocks and the
it,
Three Bears.
so I think it's actually a really good story in the sense that it reminds me that we always have to find the right bed or the right temperature of the meal, right? Because there's always a risk of going too little or going too hard, right? Pushing too hard, right? So actually, I think it was a really nice point to help us, uh, guide us to find the right way, right?
Yeah, and I must admit that floundering. I've been a little demotivated actually around agile product operating model because we do a webinar and 5,000 to 6,000 people come. I mean, it's amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's loads of LinkedIn stuff and discussions and energy, but it doesn't really go anywhere. Hasn't been going anywhere really. I mean, going anywhere. Yes, I think we've all been thinking about it a bit more and talking about it, but it hasn't really resulted in organizations really picking it up and adopting it. And yes, I've run some executive, things with my Rolodex and people that have pinged me, and I've run some teamy things, working with some PSTs and the like. It hasn't really gone anywhere. And I think now, to use the three bear analogy, I think we've found the right temperature, we've found the right thing. Maybe, or certainly we have a next hypothesis, which is around the PMO and really, and that could potentially be the place where the rubber meets the road. But we will see. I've got it on my to-do list for next week to build a data sheet that then I'll work with my working team. I've got sort of 10, 12, actually a lot of Polish people actually in my little working team, and we'll take it from there and see where it goes. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. We will see. The future is unknown. Experimentation, discovery, learning, right?
Yeah, there's some days, don't you wish the future was a little bit more known? It's just like, and I know, I'm taking my family to England. Every year I try to take them for a year, just because otherwise they forget that they're English, even though I don't think they think they're English, but I try to make sure that they think they are. And so we're going, and I was like, oh, don't you wish I actually knew what the weather's going to be? Because I'm trying to actually plan, when do we do the boat trip? I want to do the Greenwich boat trip thing, which is lovely. When do we've got a football match. Well, what do we, there's things, and I'm like, oh, don't you wish the weather was better and known? But it outside of a 10-day forecast, it's almost impossible to predict, right? And even in a 10-day forecast, it's useless. So I'm like, and that's what business is now, but that doesn't make it nice for us, right?
Well, some people claim that, the growth happens not when we are in a super comfortable state. We need some level, of difficulty.
Yeah, and that is true. And whether it's picking a new Peloton workout for your exercise, whether it's trying to do something a little different, with your kids at the weekend, a hike or something maybe, or something crazy, or go on a boat trip or whatever. Go to a museum, though my two boys look at museums like I'm telling them they're going to be tortured for an hour. But whether it's you've got to push, I think, your boundaries, and it's not easy to do, is it? It's the older I get, the less I want to do it. But yes, you're right, we need to do
So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, not only because I belong to the community, but generally I wish Scrum.org all the best, and I hope that we are going to be more and more successful with the mission, right? With helping people solve complex problems effectively.
I honestly believe we are. I mean, we are successful every day. The question is, could we be more successful? If you go into organizations that have been doing Scrum, you do see something even if it's not perfect, you do see some change. You do see some, like I was at breakfast with Ken Schwaber yesterday, and he was lamenting how organized. He says we've shown them the way, and they still don't do it. And I was like, yeah, whatever, Ken. I was like, yeah, that I agree. But I say, but how many separate test organizations do we see now? Lot less. How many teams deliver actually frequently? Yeah, a lot more, right? How many good engineering, that we've seen an improvement that we wouldn't perhaps have got without Scrum. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't. We don't have an alternate universe to test hypotheses against or a control group. But we are better at doing stuff than we were. But what is it? Why a fool thinks they know it all, a wise man thinks they know nothing. That's probably some sort of smart person said that, who probably thought he knew nothing. But that every time we learn something more, we realize how much more we could do. Compared to what we were doing with the Ration Unified process 25 years ago, doing good stuff, but thinking that you can thinking that's at that point software development is like a factory. Well, we know it's like a lab. Now we've at least come to that realization. This idea that with RUP we were trying to build this sort of ultimate software factory, and and that was just so wrong. Maybe I was an idiot, to take it full circle. What Ken first said to me, and he saw that I was, so we have come a long way, but there's so much further to go.
There is good news for us. It means there is still a lot of valuable work to do.
Yes, a lot of valuable work to do, and that could be a whole nother podcast. But yes.
I love that, and maybe it's a good moment to finish our conversation. I'm very happy and grateful for that. Thank you, Dave, for your openness, for sharing also your personal stories, and giving us some insights about uh, how does it feel to be a leader, a senior leader, and how tough this process of making decisions could be. So once again, thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. If you are interested, some resources, links to materials mentioned by Dave will be in the description box. If you have any questions, you may leave comments. We will try to answer them as best as we can. And having said that, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy your night, and come back to me one day. Bye.
Bye.